Good evening, everybody. Thank you so very much for joining us here tonight for this very special online launch of The Role I Played, Canada's Greatest Olympic Hockey Team by Sami Jo Small, published by ECW Press. We're broadcasting live from Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, in the homeland of the Métis Nation. The Role I Played is a memoir of Sami Jo Small's 10 years with Canada's national women's hockey team, beginning with her experience as a rookie at the first ever women's Olympic hockey tournament in Nagano in 1998, and culminating with Canada's third straight Olympic gold medal in Vancouver in 2010. The veteran goaltender gives the reader behind-the-scenes insight into one of the most successful teams in sports history. Now, tonight will consist of a conversation between Sami Jo Small and our special host for the evening, Leah Hextall. During the conversation, please feel free to jump in at any time and ask a question, and we'll try to get to those as the evening goes along. You'll notice that there's a Q&A box right at the bottom of the screen, so please do feel free to put your question in there at any time. You won't disturb us at all if you do, so rest assured all will proceed accordingly. I'll also point out, and I will mention again at the end, that Sami Jo Small has very kindly signed a whole pile of these books for us here at McNally Robinson Booksellers, so they are available. And I'll throw up a link to that in the chat, and then I'll also mention some more details about how you can get a copy of the book at the end of the evening. But first, Sami Jo Small is a 3-time Canadian Olympic ice hockey goalie, 2 golds and 1 silver, and a 5-time world champion. A graduate of Stanford University in mechanical engineering, she now works as a certified speaking professional, delivering messages on how to build successful teams, as well as successful teammates. From Winnipeg, she now lives in Mississauga, Ontario. Hosting tonight's conversation with Sami Jo is broadcaster and fellow Manitoban Leah Hextall, who in March became the first woman to call a national televised NHL game on Sportsnet. I couldn't be happier to ask you all to give a very warm virtual welcome to Leah Hextall and Sami Jo Small.
Hi, Leah.
Hi, Sami. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for doing this. It's funny to not be able to see anybody, but I'm so happy to see a friendly face.
Well, I am thrilled for you, and I want to thank you so much for being here tonight. I want to thank everybody who's joining us tonight via Zoom in what has been trying times, but in it, there are moments to do things that you don't always have time to do, like read this absolutely sensational book, girl, The Role I Played by Sami Jo Small. And I don't know if people can see it, but I have a few things to talk about tonight, girl. I mean, I just sped through this, and I can honestly say, I loved it. And I didn't just love it because I'm a hockey person. I loved it because it's so you and it's so honest and it's just a wonderful read. So I can't wait. So are you ready to talk about your book?
I am, but first I want to talk about you. I want to just acknowledge just how incredible of a person you are for doing this for me. I really appreciate it. But also when I was a little girl, I dreamt that I could be a broadcaster, and that was my dream. And so to see you be the first woman to do play-by-play, I mean, I'm going to cry right now, but that really, it was so monumental, and just kudos to you. And I couldn't have think of a better person. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for tonight. And maybe with that, then hard questions now.
Absolutely. And, you know, we're just 2 Manitoba girls here, and you know what? We seem to do okay so far. So let's rock and roll here, because Sami, the fact of the matter is that, you know, lots of people, especially people like yourselves, elite athletes, Olympians, they have tons of stories to tell, but they don't all put them into a book. So why the decision to write The Role I Played?
Well, I think initially, to be honest, I work as a professional speaker, as John mentioned in the beginning, and lots of speakers have a back of the room book. And that's kind of just what I wanted to do. Is that was the next step in my speaking career. I would just write a book, sell it at the back of the room, make a little bit of extra money at events, and then you're done. So after the Vancouver Olympics, I started writing this book. And a couple things happened. One is I actually worked with a local person, Les Kalecki, to get my ideas on paper. And I realized in that writing that I wasn't a very engaging storyteller. I wasn't a very good writer. And so I went back and I took some courses. But more than that, I realized that these stories were bigger than me. These stories were about some incredible women that I had the privilege to play with. And I wanted to share their stories. And I didn't just want it to be a back of the room book. I didn't just want it to be kind of haphazardly written. I really wanted to write it in a way that I could honor them and that I could share their story and our message of our team with so many people across this country and really around the world that have embraced women's hockey. So I felt like it needed some time, and I never really had an end date in mind. I just, continuously wrote and edited and changed it. And then I had my daughter, and every parent knows that once you have kids, your life just is transformed and priorities change. The manuscript went up on the shelf, and I didn't do anything with it until she went to kindergarten last year. And that's when I figured that this story needed to be told. And women's hockey was going through a trying time at the time. And I thought, people need to know some positives within the game and need to find out about these women. And so I shopped around and found my publisher, ECW Press, who has been amazing and has worked with me to get it to this point. And they're the ones that came up with that incredible cover and really got it to the point where it was something that now I feel incredibly proud of. And I hope that the people that I talk about in the book feel the same way.
I have no doubt that they do, Sami Jo. And it's interesting to me because I know as an elite athlete, you understand, and not just in hockey, but in track and field and, so many others. I know you get process, whether it's the process of training, the pre-game routine, the post-game routine, you understand that. But as you mentioned, you just yourself said, I wasn't a very good writer. There is a process to writing a book. And what did you take away from that process?
Well, I think things that I had learned in my athletic career really helped with the writing process. So developing a routine helped, but also acknowledging that I wasn't good at something. And I think as a goaltender, the amount of years that I spent on the national team, goaltending changed very dramatically. I mean, when I started goaltending, skate saves were what we were doing, and then it transformed into butterflies and then morphed into reverse VHs and got way more complicated. And with every stage, I tried to stay at the top of my game, and I tried to relearn new techniques. So often I would go on the ice with kids 8 and 9 years old that were better at me than some of the things that I was learning. And I needed to sort of shed that ego and be okay with learning. And I think the process of sport really taught me that. The different roles I played taught me that. So being okay with accepting help, asking for help, reaching out for help, and acknowledging that I didn't always have all the answers, but to have a continuous forward progression. And so I really tried to carve out some time every day. And, that's not always easy. Life gets in the way. But with each story, it kind of morphed into a bigger and more exorbitant book. And at the end, I really had to cut a lot of stories. So there's a lot of stories that maybe could go in the next book, who knows, but that were duplicated. So for instance, I might have written a story about water polo and volleyball, but they were about the same lesson. They were about the same role that I played within a team framework. And so, I had to cut some, which meant I had to cut some people too, and some people that were near and dear to me too. So along the way, that was kind of a difficult process for me, figuring that out. But I tried to really see it from the point of view of the reader. And what I wanted to do was write it from a first person perspective to bring the reader in to the story with us. So they felt like they were going through this journey with us. And I wanted them to feel the emotions I felt. I wanted them to go along that roller coaster and to ultimately be cheering for us while we were going through it. But for them to feel as if their life story also had those same moments and that we had this shared human experience. So I hope it evokes emotions for people. And I don't know you clearly have tabbed a lot of different things, but I'm sure at different times we resonate with different parts of the book. And so that's what I was really trying to get. And the real raw emotions, I wanted them on the paper to know that we are perhaps Olympians, but we are just regular people who have ups and downs just like everybody else.
And Sami Jo, when you talk about those emotions, what I loved about this book so much was how honest you were. And in order to be honest, you have to be vulnerable. And that is not an easy thing to do. And you really did lay it out about your relationships with teammates, with coaches, and you could feel that. And it wasn't always sunshine and roses. And I'm just wondering, for you to put those feelings on paper, were you concerned at all about how your teammates and coaches may feel about the role I played?
For sure. I mean, that was a big thing for me, is that, I didn't want to throw anybody else under the bus. I didn't want it to be a story that revealed their story. I mean, every person has their own story, and this is my own story from my perspective. And I didn't want to share stories that people didn't want out there, that perhaps they were seen in a bad light. But the two main characters, we'll say coaches and other goaltenders, those were the two people within the book that are kind of seen as villains. But these people are my friends. These people are people that I have respect and admiration for. And so when I finished the final manuscript, I sent it to the coaches. I sent it to my goalie partners. And I wanted them to know just how much respect and admiration and how much I admired their skill, their play, but also them as humans. And in this book, in certain times, the reader goes through my journey and so sees the perhaps jealousy, perhaps envy, sadness, anger that I have towards these people making decisions or perhaps playing in my spot. And I didn't want them to ever feel like those emotions were still there, that I had come full circle in conversations. I made sure to call the coaches. I had a lengthy conversation, well, first with Wally Kozak, who is one of the heroes of the story, that is sort of the person that allows me to get that very first tryout. But he knows the other coaches very intimately. And so I sent it to him first to just see if, did he think that these other coaches would be okay with it? And so we made some changes, and then I sent it to the other coaches, to Danielle and Melody Davidson, Danielle Sauvageau and Melody Davidson. And, I really haven't had lengthy conversations with them since that time. So it's 20 years have gone by. Now we've seen each other at events and have worked on projects together, but we haven't talked about that time. And it was really interesting because since then I've become a coach, I've become a general manager, I've become a parent. I've realized just how hard their job was. I've realized the decisions they had to make were for the best for the team. I was just a small part in the entire organization. They had pressures on them from the outside that they were having to defend, chauvinistic attitudes. They were having to push for our team, get money for our team. There's just so much more to their job than I saw at the time. But I wrote it from that time. And so I wanted them to appreciate that I now know everything that went on. But, like a student never assumes that their teacher goes home to a real family. I never thought they were really real people. They were just these people making this decision at the time. So I did have those tough conversations, and they were amazing. They were incredible about it and just so supportive. One funny thing that Mel Davidson said to me was, next time I give a coaches symposium, I'm going to tell the coaches, like, you make sure when you're having that conversation with your athlete that whatever you say is going to be written in a book. I was like, that's perfect.
Oh, life lesson number one for all coaches who are watching right now. It's going to go in the book. So be careful. I love that.
Taking a journal. Somebody is taking notes.
Oh, I love that. Well, there you go. And, and Sami, that's wonderful that you were able to, reach out to them. I'm sure that was a little bit nerve-wracking because, sure, those were the parts of the book that I really found fascinating because, obviously I have an affection for goaltenders. I've got a crazy one in my family, and you're much more sane than he is. But the fact is I want to drill down a little bit about that relation with Kim St. Pierre, because she is that constant. And, the goalie position is so different because it's not like the other positional players, because there's only one person gets that feeling, gets that start. And you know that better than anyone. And so that back and forth with Kim, well, you had that relationship, you were teammates, but there was so much competition and that push-pull between the two of you. How do you look now at your relationship with Kim? And perhaps how did that, affect you in your adult life and going forward?
Yeah, for a long time, we were teammates for sure. And we were, I would say, friends. You know, I would never have said a bad word about Kim. She was always so warm and nice, and, you know, never a bad word was ever said between us, but we were pitted against each other. And that the same goes, Charlene Labote was also a longtime goalie partner of mine too. And so, you know, the coaches set up this framework that you are pushing each other constantly. And you don't often get to see that other goalie. They're in the other net. So you're not having lengthy conversations with them as perhaps you might with your own defenseman. When one is in the net during a game, the other's on the bench. When one is preparing, the other one is not. And so, you know, you're not often doing things together. And so I've often, you know, in post-career thought about what amazing friends we could have been. And I think our relationship has really morphed since leaving the national team. For both of them, I think my respect and admiration has grown a tremendous amount. And there was often jealousy and anger, and I wanted that to be real. You know, I wanted people to know that these were my friends, but I wanted to play. And you are constantly battling with that. And you battle with that emotion of, I shouldn't be feeling this way. The team can't possibly go on without me, but they do. And, you know, that's a tough emotion to put down on paper because it hurts and it's sad. And, but I think it's real because people go through that, you know, whether it's in your workplace environment, in a family, in a sports team. We often want what others have, and it's coming to terms with that in a way to then be able to support that person. And, you know, I tried to do the little things to ensure that I wasn't taking away from anything that they were accomplishing. So trying to be a supportive teammate, tapping them on the pads, going to practices with them, that extra practice. And they did the same for me as well. And, you know, looking back at it, I don't think Canadian goaltending would have been so strong had it not been for those relationships. But I really do admire the relationship between Kim and Charlie. And I talk about that in the book, that they were able to have this amazing friendship through it all, despite it all. And despite sort of the ups and downs of one playing, one not playing. And that is just remarkable. And it is something that I am so proud of them for having sort of kept that throughout that. And I talk about one story in the book in particular in Vancouver where Kim St. Pierre gave a period of play to Charlie so that she could get a medal on the blue line with her teammates. And that to me is a story that's not told enough. That is just a true testament to Kim's character and to their friendship and to the recognition of admiring somebody else's skills. And both were so incredibly gifted. I just feel so fortunate to have got to play with them. But I did want to make sure that they were okay with it, you know, and I say that right in the very beginning of the book, that I apologize to my goalie partners. And that's not just Kim and Charlie, love teams as well that I played with. But it really was because of them that I was able to get to that, to hone my skills and to see in them these skills that I didn't have. I didn't have any goalie coaching. They did. So I was constantly watching them and admiring them. And when I first joined the team, Manon Réaume was there, and watching her on the ice with Leslie Redden, I wanted to do everything they did. I mimicked every move they made. And I almost, in a way, was in awe of my goalie partners while still wanting to be in their position. So yeah, it was tough emotions, but hopefully real. And by acknowledging them, you can move past them and become friends. And when Kim St. Pierre was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, I jumped for joy. It was so deserving and something that I'm just so proud of her for accomplishing that. And I told her that I'd be in the front row when she finally gets to go into the hall.
Oh, that's incredible. And, you know, it's interesting too, Sami, because you talk about Kim and Charlie, and the fact is that they came up through a very different system with Hockey Canada. They were likely recognized. They had the Quebecness behind them, and they're the goalie factory. And here you are in Winnipeg, and you mentioned Wally, and, you know, kind of getting that, okay, here I am with my bag, and I'm going to try out for Team Canada. You know, like just, well, all right, let's see how this goes. But the fact,
I'm ready. Anybody else?
Yeah, exactly, right. And the thing is, though, is that what I noticed with the relationship with the coaches, and, you know, you talked about those relationships, is that we know sports has politics to it. We all are aware of that, especially when you get to the national team level, because everybody is so talented and everybody truly deserves to be there most of the time. And the fact is, though, is that you taught that it wasn't just about, no matter how much you trained and how much you did, it wasn't about how good you were on the ice, that you needed, and I believe you were told this by one of your goalie coaches, that you needed to mold yourself into the type of player that the coaches felt was the goaltender for Team Canada. Can you take us into that a little bit more about what that meant and how you had to change?
For sure. Yeah. Interesting, because it really was this mold that we all perceived. And that's the thing that I think as athletes is that often you don't know what that mold is. We all have a construct in our head of what that should be, what we think the coaches are looking for. But we often don't know what that really is. And especially for me in my position, the coaches that are making the decisions, they are not goalies themselves. And that's hard because they're looking for maybe different things. You're getting some feedback here and there, but it might not always be about technique. And so you're right. In the book, I write about one of my goalie coaches, Dave Jamieson, who really encouraged me to look like I was trying. And I often looked like I was trying. In my mind, I was conserving energy. I was perhaps playing like they play now. So I was, standing up if the puck was a little bit further out. I was more on the goal line, deeper. And so, I always joke that I was revolutionary because I did this well before.
Yes.
But this is, at the time, it was very aggressive, and it was very quick on your feet, and butterfly slides, and sort of the new Pata Groix style. And that, I didn't have that style. So I constantly tried to mimic what the other goalies were doing so that I could be like them and look like them, because they were getting the starts. And I thought, well, if they're getting the starts, then I need to do that. And I came along at a time where Kim, Charlie, and myself, we were kind of all the same height. We kind of all looked the same in the net. So I think back now, of all the goalies that didn't have the opportunity, I think of a goalie like Marie-France Morin, who, unknown to many Canadians, was the goalie in Ottawa at the time, came to many tryout camps, but she was much smaller, two-pad stack specialist. And she never really got that opportunity because she probably didn't look like us, And so while I probably fit most of the mold already, I didn't perceive that in my mind. I perceived that I needed to look like the other goalies. So I tried desperately to learn new goalie techniques. And I think that continued to elevate my game because I didn't have a lot of the training in my background that the other goalies had. And so it took me longer. I wouldn't say I worked harder because those girls worked extremely, extremely hard. But I was definitely, I noticed the minutia of technique. And I think that came from my track and field background, is wanting to repeat the technique over and over again, and not just for no reason, but to do it with perfection and attempt to get better each and every time. So that's the way that I kind of approached my goaltending, was to be the most efficient I could to get to the point where I thought I needed to be. And so often, I would make it look like I was working really hard by, moving around and shaking, but like it was no different. So I often laughed at what I thought I needed to do to make it look like I was doing something. When in reality, I think all they probably cared about was me stopping the puck.
Well, that little 3-inch diameter of, what was it, rubber that you call in the book? It was a great line about just stopping that bouncy thing. And I thought that was great. No, but you are revolutionary because that's exactly what all the goaltenders do right now. You got a Vezina Trophy winner in Connor Hellebuck, who's all about don't move, just move where you need to get and get there as efficiently as possible. So you are revolutionary, girl. You need to take ownership of that. I want to talk to you a little bit about the 2002 Salt Lake City Games. One of the reasons that I love this book so much is because you take moments from your childhood here in Manitoba and Winnipeg, and you weave them through the story, and you go back and forth the moment. And, and it's very clear that you were an Olympic nut. You loved the Olympics from you were young. So to get that tap, you're going to the games and you're not the third string goalie, you are going to play. What did that feel like? And, you know, when you look back at that, winning a gold medal and, you know, contributing to that gold medal so much, where does that rank, Sami Jo, not only in your hockey career, but I would have to assume your life?
Yeah, I mean, certainly winning a gold medal is very special. Making the team in this country at that time was extremely hard. And, you know, we often realized that once we got to the Olympics or the World Championships, we were likely going to win a medal. So making the team was really where the competition happened. That's, you know, you're never guaranteed a spot. And centralization in an Olympic year was an entire year leading up to the Olympics that we were training together in Calgary. And those were perhaps the toughest times because you are competing against your teammates for in a goalie position, or you know, forward wants to be not on the fourth line, but on the third line. And maybe the third line forward wants to be on the power play. And maybe the power play specialist wants to be the shootout final shooter. Everybody kind of wants that next level. And there's, you know, you're constantly being pitted against each other to elevate the entire team's game. And I think that that's what allowed Canada to stay on top for so long. But I can remember that when Danielle Sauvageau walked into the dressing room to announce the 2002 Olympic team, you would have thought that it would have been this joyous occasion. But the reality was she walked in and there was empty stalls. And the person beside me, Delaney Collins, who also from Manitoba, from Pilot Mound, she wasn't in her stall and there was no equipment in her stall. And when she announced that this was your Olympic team and you looked around to see who wasn't there, that, I mean, it still gives me shivers, because it's like sadness consumes your body because you had become so close to these people. And I often equate it to a workplace environment where there's cuts and you have no choice in the matter. And you're the one left. You know, it's that survivor's guilt that you're angry at the people making the decisions. You're angry at the people left in your friends' spots. And it wasn't, you know, I talk about it in the book. It wasn't until I got out into my car, and Jennifer Bottrell was my roommate. She had made the team also. We got in the car and it was like, oh yeah, congratulations on making the Olympic team. It's like
that little thing. Congratulations on that.
Walking out. And so I think the most special part of it all for me, and most Olympians will attest to this, is the ceremonies, the opening and closing ceremonies, where you get to wear the cool clothes, you get to represent your country. But more than that, you can't mess it up. I mean, you can just go out and just really enjoy the moment. You can soak it all in. When you're at the games and you're playing, you don't really have that ability. You're doing a job and you've been training a lifetime. But in the ceremonies is where you can kind of let your hair down a little bit, and you can really just appreciate not only the moment, but all the people that have gone into that moment. And I know for me, walking into the Salt Lake City Games, I thought of all those teams I played on. I thought of all the sports I played. I thought of the provincial championships that we went to, including, I know you're a badminton player. We went to the provincial championships in Portage-la Prairie. I don't want to say, but Jeanne Sauvé are provincial champions in badminton. No, but you know, it's true. I thought of those moments. I thought of the silly moments I went through with teammates. I thought of my friends, my family. I thought of my brother and I watching so many Olympics on TV and just idolizing the opening ceremonies. And so those moments did come to me as I was walking in that opening ceremonies. And every games, the opening and closing, I think, are my most special moments because there's no pressure and you can just really enjoy it.
Yeah, that, and just so you know, that comes across in the book. Every time you discuss the opening ceremonies of the games you went to, it completely comes through about how much that meant to you. And, you know, I have to stick with the Salt Lake City Games because I, like you, I love the Olympics. I've always watched them. And in that games, the big thing that I remember, and I will never forget this, and as soon as you started talking about it in the book, is that you guys beat the Americans in the gold medal final, and Hayley Wickenheiser flew over to Don Cherry pretty much immediately as the buzzer went and was like, I want to talk to you. And she rolled in and said, the Americans had the Canadian flag on their floor and were walking over it. Now I want to know if they want us to sign it. So I was so excited in the book when it was in the intermission, gold medal final, playing the Americans. Cassie Campbell-Pascal was your captain. She stands up, very emotional, as you described in the book, and says, the Americans have our flag on the ground and they're walking over it. And then you guys go back out onto the ice. And I've always wondered, how did you guys find out that? is it really true? Or did somebody tell you guys that just to motivate you? So I was wondering if you could give us, like, I've always wanted to know more about that. And you do talk about it in the book, so I don't want to wreck it completely, but I just was wondering if you could give us a little inside info on that.
I will unpack it. And you know what's interesting in the book is you talk about that, but I don't talk about the conclusion of the Hayley Wickenheiser part because we as athletes didn't know that happened. So I had to write from the first person narrative perspective I wanted to include that, but there was no way to kind of put that in there. But anyways, so that's the question when I'm speaking from the stage, giving talks to corporations or associations, that's still the one I get asked about the most, is the flag on the floor. And so, you know, I describe in the book that Cassie, emotional, gets up there, tears in her eyes, and she was just this amazing leader that we had that you wanted to do anything she said. She could have asked us to walk through fire and we would have. So she gives the story about how the Americans had our flag on their floor, and every time they went to the ice surface, they stepped on it, and how disrespectful. Let's go out and show them. We were up 3-1 at that point. So let's show them we can win this medal. And so, you know, of course it rallies the team. We go out there and just like a team of football players, you're heading out following your fearless leader. Now, after the game, of course, we go through the celebrations, and I think for the most part, most of the players forgot about it. You know, like we had won the medal, you're thinking about so many other things, but not Hayley. Hayley is foaming at the mouth, and she finds Don Cherry, and anybody that knows Hayley Wickenheiser, she is intense and passionate in everything she does. And she goes on this rant, and she's like, I want to know if they want us to sign it. And so, of course, Don Cherry loves it, and that becomes the iconic moment of that championship. But immediately, the media went over to the American players and asked and said, you know, why did you guys have the flag on her floor? And their response was, what are you talking about? What flag? And so I don't know. Did it happen? Did it not happen? Cass swears she heard it from a rink staff, but who knows? And you know, I'd like to think that any team that I've ever been a part of has some incredible people, but we also have the other end of the spectrum. We have people that would do dumb things. I mean, every team has that. Every workplace environment, every family has that. And you have some amazing leaders. And when I look back at somebody like Cammy Granato, I have just the utmost respect for her and admiration for what she's done for the game. And I just really like her as a person. And I just don't think that she would have allowed that to happen. I mean, I think that year in particular was the World Trade Center leading up to the 2002 Olympic Games. Some of the American girls had carried that tattered flag from the World Trade Center into the opening ceremonies, the American flag. And so I think they understood the importance of the flag. And I like to believe the best in people. And so I think it was a good story that motivated us. And I like to believe that the Americans perhaps never did it. And maybe that's just me seeing the glass half full, seeing my adversaries as real people and good people, and hopeful that they never did that. But who knows? We will never know. And you'll have to ask Cass next time that.
I'm going to the next time I see that girl.
Has that history inside her.
Yeah, no, and you know, I agree with you though. I mean, I've had a chance to get to know Cammy Granato a bit, and you know, I love the way you speak about the Americans, and not just the Americans, the Finns and the Swedes, and just how much admiration you did have, even though this was your opposition and you didn't like them very much in the moment, but just how much it was out there. Because I would have to think, with everything that the women's game goes through, you guys, and just from what I know from the women's game, is you really are a fraternity, and you know that you're best when you are supporting each other.
Yeah, I think that has transformed. You know, I think initially when I joined the national team, there wasn't college women's hockey. So there wasn't many players from the US that had played in Canada, or Canada that had played in the US. So we didn't know them that well, you know, like we didn't know them as people. And their coach, Ben Smith, wouldn't let them talk to us in hallways. You know, if they got caught talking to us, they were in a lot of trouble. So it meant that there wasn't very many relationships, friendships that could occur. However, as women's hockey grew, so did the opportunities for girls. And the girls started to accept scholarships down to the States and play alongside Americans and Finns and Swedes, and vice versa. They would come up and play club hockey in Canada. And so I had many Americans that played on my team, and getting to know them, they become your teammates. They become the ones that you're going to battle with each and every day. And so despite the fact that they put on that American jersey for those 2 weeks leading up to the Olympic Games, they still are your friends and your teammates. So there's started to develop a mutual respect, understanding that we are the only ones in the entire world going through what we're going through. And I think that that can be incredibly valuable, not only in a sporting environment, but in a workplace environment, sharing best practices. I think that what COVID has taught us is that it's important to work together, and that, you know, as there's a race for a vaccine, it's important that we share our knowledge, that we share important information so that we can all grow and we can continue to compete at the highest level. The Slovakian team that lost to Canada, I think 18-0 in Vancouver, probably could have beaten our 2002 Olympic team in Salt Lake City. Like, that's how much international women's hockey has grown on just a whole level. It's incredible, but it's meant that Canada and the US have had to stay above that. And that's really a testament to the administration, to those players that have gone through the program, the machine, as I call it, to really elevate the game to the next level. And it's been incredible to watch the skill develop each and every Olympics. I mean, how much better can these girls get? This is awesome to watch.
It truly is. And you see it not only at the Olympic level, but when you were watching the Canadian Women's Hockey League, which you were such a part of as a general manager for Toronto and a former player. And really, as we find out in the book, which I didn't even know, and I covered the CWHL, is that you were so instrumental in starting that league, which, quite frankly, I will say, I think that might be the biggest part of your legacy, if I may say so, Sami Jo. But, you know, you just talked about the machine that is Team Canada, and it really is that. And I think we know that there's only one result in Team Canada, and that's to win, and to win gold in whatever we do. And that is the standard that we have from junior all the way up to the national team at the highest level. And you talked about in the book about there was moments that were very difficult for you being a part of Team Canada, but I'm gonna bring you in now to a reading from your book, because even though it was hard sometimes, what always got you through was what started it right here in Winnipeg. And I wonder if you can read a section from your book about a skate that you did right here locally, because I'd love for you to share that with the audience.
For sure. That's the one at Norbury, right?
You got it. It's one of my favorite quips of the book.
It's funny because different parts of the book stand out to different people. And in conversation with, I think it was Wally Kozak, this was his favorite story too. And this is, you know, I think people that can appreciate hockey, this is what I think all of us feel when we find our passion. So this is 1989, Joy, skating on my own. It's mid-January and classes have finished for the day, but instead of heading to the bus stop, I'm heading to Norbury Community Center to skate. I'm 13 years old and I wear my white puffy boys AAA Warriors hockey jacket with pride as I carry my sticks and skates. Sometimes the community center's doors are open, but today they're not. There's no one in sight. I tried to convince some of my friends to skate, but no one could, so it's just me. I love having the ice to myself, adore being the lone skater on a fresh sheet. I check all the rinks for the best ice and decide on the one nearest to the club. The whiteboards look as if they're held up by snowbanks, but that's just an illusion. When I was younger, I used to play real games on this ice, and my parents would stand on these snowbanks. We'd go inside between periods, and my teammates would try everything to keep their feet warm, from pepper in their skates to hair dryers, but the cold never bothered me. I could skate out here for hours in freezing temperatures. Tentatively, I make my way across the ice. No Zamboni today, but the sun has smoothed the surface. It's only minus 15 Celsius, which is quite different from the minus 35s of last week. I'm excited that I won't have to double up on neck warmers pulled up so high that only my eyes are exposed. Today, just a toque will do. No prairie wind to slow me down, and the sun makes for ideal skating conditions. I can see my breath as I hop into the player's box. I remove my boots, exposing my sock feet to the elements, but just as quickly I stuff them into my skates, feeling the cold of the plastic toe caps. Despite being a full-time goalie with real goalie skates, I've held on to these player skates precisely for days like these. My backpack leans up against the wood planks. I fish around in its depths for my puck. I tie up my skates, trying to minimize the amount of time my hands are outside my mitts. I reach for my neck warmer and decide to pull it over my head. Best to start warm and de-layer as I warm up. It's 3:30 p.m. My mom's coming at 5 to pick me up. I put on my garbage mitts, adorned with the color marker depiction of the Calgary Olympic logo. I grab my white Titan stick with red lettering. Standing up, I throw my lone puck onto the glistening surface. The ice is all mine. Stepping down out of the wooden player's box, I feel the great joy of ice beneath my steel. My skates feel more comfortable than my running shoes. I push towards the puck. I skate, shoot, and stick handle. I invent games for myself, mimicking what I see on Saturday nights. I pretend there are other players out here with me, sidestepping and dangling as I go. The imaginary goaltender is no match for my make-believe games. I speed up, feel the wind on my face. I slow down to catch my breath and pull down my red neck warmer covered in frost. On this ice, I'm always the star. The end.
You know, girl, you're a writer. You're a writer. I mean, just what I loved so much about that part is, you know, the ice against your steel. And I think about the people I see on Saturday night. Like, you can just see every second of that, and you can picture it in the prairie wind against your face, and it brings us all back to what we are. But what I love about it most, Sami, is that when I'm reading that, you could be male, you could be female, but that is the dream of every young kid who's playing hockey. And that's where I just feel it's not about the women's game. It's not about the men's game. It's about the game. And I just love that passage so much.
Well, thank you. It's really about the joy and the joy that I get when I play. And that could be any sport, but you get so immersed in it. And anybody that's had that opportunity, and you know, I was asked the other day if I feel lucky or I feel like I have talent. And I think it just all begins with the fortunate, I just feel so fortunate to have been born in Canada to parents that allowed me to play. And I mean, who can ask for anything more? The biggest honor, I think, perhaps of my life so far is that ice surface was renamed the Sami Jo Small hockey facility in Winnipeg. And it still makes me tear up because little boys and little girls are going to go onto that ice surface and have that same dream. And that's pretty amazing. I don't mean to make everybody else cry, but.
No, it is amazing. And it's just truly, you know, I just think about all the stories that you share about your time in Winnipeg and, you know, your parents, and the book is dedicated to mom and dad, and, you know, your brother was such a pivotal part, and your very good friend, Jen Botterill, and, you know, all these incredible people that have so many ties here to home, even though you went to a national and global stage. And I talk about that a lot. I feel fortunate you mentioned Canada, and I'm sure you feel the same way, to be from Manitoba and the prairie support that you get from home that does not leave when you do. And does that make sense to you when I say that?
For sure. And I never say that anywhere else is home. Winnipeg is still always home. And some of us are forced because of a job or life to move away. And, you know, there was no elite women's hockey team in Manitoba at the time. And I moved to play for the Toronto to play hockey here. And, you know, yeah, I met my husband and I got stuck. But
the husband or no? Just kidding.
Oh no, I love him dearly. But no, it is. I still run a hockey school at Gateway Community Center. It's we come back every Christmas. I think that's been the toughest thing about the pandemic is I was there for the last Jets home game, and we haven't been back. You know, it's hard because now this changes everything. You know, you just assumed you could always hop on a flight, but my whole family are still there. Anybody looking for eye care can just head to my brother's office, Portage Avenue. Everybody is, you know, that has mattered most in my life predominantly is still there. And every time I go home, it feels like I haven't missed a beat. And that's what I love about Winnipeg and about Manitoba is that just everybody feels like you're an next door neighbor, you know, and no matter where we go in the world, you try to find that connection. You meet somebody from Winnipeg or from Manitoba, and it's like instantly you ask, oh, do you know this person or you know that person? And that's really special. And I think only in having lived away from Manitoba can I really appreciate all the amazing things about the city and its diverseness and its ability to support its own. I think that's been incredible. Having a place like McNally do this for me is so special. And it means a lot to me because this was always my dream to launch my book in Winnipeg. And so to have them, you know, my local hometown do this is really special.
Well, I know we're all thrilled to be a part of this tonight, and we are starting to get to the point where we have to wrap up with you, Sami. So I have to ask you this because the book, The Role I Played. So when you look back at your time with Team Canada, how would you describe the role you played?
Well, I think it was different every single time. and it morphed and it changed, and it was, I think, what real people go through. Everybody changes roles within their lives, and we're all put into situations that sometimes we don't want to be in, and other times we are at the leader of the pack, exactly where we want to be. And so I had moments like that, starting goaltender, making the big saves for Canada, and had moments where I was sitting up in the stands watching my team. And often it is more difficult to lead from behind, and those were the moments that were the toughest for me, because I felt my most natural when I was playing, when I was contributing. I felt like I could really lead my team and make a difference. What I struggled with was, how do I still have value when I am not contributing in the same way, when I'm not that person on the ice, when I'm, maybe not having as big a role. And I think a lot of us struggle with that. How do we still find pride in what we do? And it was in looking to others. There's relationships I had built with people throughout not only my national team career, but throughout my athletic career, and understanding that so many people had been put in these roles, having that perspective. I tell a story about volleyball, about two of my friends, Karen and Stephanie, that we went together since kindergarten, won this provincial championship, and they didn't get to play in the final game, but they were still just as supportive. And when I found out these times when I wasn't going to get to play, I looked to strength like that. I looked for moments like that, because I realized that we all go through those moments. And so in the end, I think the role was not necessarily about hockey. Well, I got to have some big moments and there's some tough times. I think ultimately it is about being a caretaker of this history. I was the one that journaled it. I was the one that took the notes. I was the one, that maybe had the time to take the pictures because, I maybe wasn't playing, or had to find something else to do. So we never really know ultimately what our role is going to be, or what value we can provide. But I think all you can do is do the best in your situation. And so that's what I tried to do. And now with this book, I try to honor all of those people that I feel like helped me get through those moments and helped me celebrate the big times and were there in the agony of defeat. And I wanted other people to see their value. I wanted to share them with Canadians. For so many people that cheered our team on, they everybody knows our team and how successful we were, but people beyond maybe Cassie Campbell and Haley Wickenheiser, they might not know the other names. And I wanted them to know the names. I wanted them to know what these women struggled through, the challenges, the obstacles, but their strength and determination to get to this level. Somebody like Susie Ewan from Winnipeg, who was one of my role models and mentors, most people probably don't know that name, but everybody should. She was one of the top scorers at the World Championships in 1990, 4'11", from a Chinese immigrant family that didn't start playing hockey till she was 18. I mean, just such an incredible story that needs to be told and remembered. And so I just feel so proud that I could tell some of those stories in this book and share these amazing women with others. And hopefully others can find themselves in the words and find themselves in these characters and really get to know the people in their communities that are spread out right across this country.
I love that. Lead from behind. The book is The Role I Played. As I was reading it, all I kept thinking was, you're such a better person than I would have been in any of those situations. So congratulations to you. That says more about me than it does you probably. But Sami, I absolutely loved this book, and I truly mean that. And this has been just a delight getting to see you and connect with you. And I'm so honored that I got a chance to share in this with you. And at this time, we're going to bring John back on to tell everybody where we can purchase this incredible book. And Sami, you mentioned something about, I think, signed, like, because my book's not signed. Did you know that you didn't sign my book? Just so you know, I'm still a little upset about that, but that's fine. I'll get at you someday.
God's going to tell you that you can get signed books at McNally, which I want to push everybody towards McNally. But if you happen to have got one already, and you do want it signed, of course, normally I would have been at McNally signing books, but I can't do that. So what I want to do for anybody on the call that does want a signature in their book is I actually went and bought some of these stickers that I sign to whomever you like. If you want a Christmas gift or whatever, personalized, you can just send me an email at Sami Small, and you can find that on my website. So no need to write that down right now. But if you do want one, just send me an email, and I'll send it to you free of charge.
Great. You can put mine to Leah, you're the greatest, Sami. Yeah, that's, because I'm modest that way. So you can just send that to me. I think John's going to join us here, but I just have to say, there were some questions in the queue and I'm sorry I didn't get to all of them, but some guy named Billy Bridges wants to know, is it true that you married someone not from Manitoba?
Well, he's from Prince Edward Island, and I get bugged all the time that I'm from away. I will never be from there. So Billy is an honorary Manitoban, and in fact, opened up the accessible toboggan run at St. Vital Park. So, I mean, what's more Manitoban than that, really?
Yeah, no kidding. And I'll tell you something, if I ever get a chance to be around your husband, I really want to try playing sledge hockey one day.
It is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I don't talk about him enough. We bug each other that, we often don't share our public love for each other in a social way, but I'm just so fortunate that I'm with somebody that is so amazingly talented that I can now follow along in his footsteps, but also that was so understanding during all of this. And in writing the book, there'd often be times where I'd be cooking dinner mad or upset. And he would say, like, is everything okay? Like, did I do something wrong? Often thinking it was him, but it was that I didn't get to start a game 15 years prior. And so he had to deal with my roller coaster of emotions as a writer as well, let alone having to support me on the ice. So thank you, Billy. And I don't tell you enough just how appreciative I am of you and what an inspiration he is to so many as well.
Oh, absolutely. Just a star in his own right. He'll get his book one day too, Sami, but you had to come first. We know who the star is, right? So there we go. So I'm going to leave this over for John now because he's got some housekeeping to do. So I will wait for him to do that and stop talking for once.
Thank you so much, Leah. And thank you, Sami, as well, for sharing with us this evening. This was a wonderful conversation. I feel really privileged to be a part of this. So thank you both for taking so much time out to come and join us and celebrate the publication of the book this way. As was mentioned, copies of The Role I Played are available at McNally Robinson Booksellers. They are signed by Sami Jo Small. You can order those online. You can give us a call. You can visit us in person. You can have them mailed across Canada or elsewhere. And if you're in Winnipeg, you can even have it delivered to your doorstep if you'd like. You don't even have to leave your house to get a signed copy. So feel free to give us a call. Otherwise, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us here this evening, for your questions, for your comments. It's been lovely to spend the night with you. And I'd like you all to join me one more time in thanking ECW Press for publishing this wonderful book, Leah Hextall for her incredible hosting this evening, and of course, Sami Jo Small for everything. Thank you all so very much, and have a wonderful night.